Yo, what's going on, everybody? We are live. It is UFC Vegas 92 this week. And of course, we got to get it down to business. Liam's first look. If you're new here, my name's Liam. I take a look at these fight cards each and every week, and we start on first look, trying to give you guys an idea of where we're looking at, right? We do more research throughout the week, but we want to give you guys our first impression and get it started before Bets and Banter, a solo show. So without further ado, if you guys are new here, we start with the main event of the evening for our first look, and it's UFC Fight Night, Edson Barboza against Lerone Murphy. And it's a fascinating fight in the featherweight division. So without further ado, let's break it down and let's go over to Tapology, bring up the measurables here. We'll bring up UFC stats as well, give ourselves a couple different angles to look at this fight from. We'll start, of course, with the odds, guys. We've got the odds from our friends at Fight Numbers, and our odds for this main event, best available price, -135 on the favorite, Lerone Murphy, out of the UK. And you've got the best available comeback, +125 on Bet365. That's on the underdog, Edson Jr. Barboza, and he's the much more seasoned UFC fighter. However, he's a lot older of a fighter as well. He's been in the 155-pound division. That's where he cut his teeth. Now he's down in this 145-pound division where he's had mixed results. So I think that this is an interesting fight on paper. But what we also have to discuss is these measurables. So let's talk about the fact, like I said, Edson Barboza is definitely going to be the older fighter coming into this matchup. You've got, a guy with 35 professional fights on his record. So a lot of professional experience. He's 38 years of age. That's pretty up there, especially for this featherweight division where guys start to age out a little bit. You look on the other side, 32 years of age for Lerone Murphy. So 6-year age gap. That is pretty substantial. That is pretty significant. And then you're looking on this side, the height and reach is actually going to go towards the underdog here, Edson Barboza. He is going to have a 2-inch height advantage as well as a 1.5-inch reach advantage. Let's just go over and compare the measurables to UFC stats, make sure they line up. Yeah, that seems to check out. So about a 2-inch height and reach advantage for the underdog here, Edson Jr. Barboza. Now let's look at what the stats can tell us. Edson Barboza coming into this fight, despite having a great record as a striker, despite being a notorious knockout threat and a really dangerous guy on the feet, he surprisingly has a negative strike differential over the course of his UFC career. When you look at that, he's averaging about 4.2 strikes landed per minute, and then you're looking at 4.3 on the comeback absorbed per minute. So we don't always break down the stats intricately on this show, but I do think it matters for a matchup like this because on the other side, Lerone Murphy, he has not fought the same quality of competition. Let's be clear about that. But what he has done is he's separated himself from his opponents, landing about 3.7 significant strikes per minute compared to just 2.4 strikes absorbed. So one of these guys has a negative striking differential. The other guy has a positive striking differential. And the other thing that we want to look at here is the fact that Edson Barboza at his peak, at the best of his game, was always a little bit chinny. He's a very powerful fighter, but let's just look back. His last fight against Sadiq Youssef, he was knocked down. He was knocked down against grappler Bryce Mitchell a few fights before that. He was knocked down twice and finished in the third round against Giga Chikadze. He was knocked down as well against Justin Gaethje in the first round. He was knocked out and finished in that fight. He was knocked down against Donald Cerrone by a jab and submitted in the first round. If you look back to that fight, Jamie Varner knocked him down and finished him with punches in the first round all the way back in 2012. So since 2012, my man's been absorbing UFC level knockdowns, and you have to just take that into account when you're capping this fight. Does Edson look like he's on all the juice in the world? Yes, he does, respectfully. Does he also look like a guy that's cutting a lot of weight to make 145 pounds? Yes, he does. He looks like a guy who at 38 years of age has kind of pushed all his chips in, and he's saying, I'm going to cut the weight. I'm going to do whatever it takes to try and get to this title fight, try and get to a huge opportunity. And you're seeing a huge sacrifice from him. You're seeing a lot of hard work from Edson Barboza. He looks like he's in fantastic physical shape. I posted pictures of both these guys over on Twitter earlier today just because they both look like they're in fantastic physical shape leading up to this contest. They both look like they're very prepared. The difficulty is, right, even at the peak of his powers when he wasn't cutting so much weight and when he was probably still using something at 155 pounds, he was getting dropped by jabs from Donald Cerrone. So I do think that the more durable fighter in this matchup is the younger man, Lerone Murphy. I think that just makes sense logically. I think that also kind of corresponds with the tape that we've watched. I think that Edson Barboza is the more lethal striker. However, how much of a difference does that make, right? If he can eat the shots that are coming back at him, maybe he's going to get hit with a little bit cleaner shots, Lerone Murphy. But I don't think we've seen a lot to suggest that he can't, get into a tough fight, keep moving forward, keep finding a way to push through and win. He does have that winning quality about him, where he has, found a way to keep pushing forward and winning fights in the UFC. Now, we got to talk about a quality of competition and a level of experience difference in this fight, because Lerone Murphy on the other side here, just 13-0-1 as a professional. So like I said, never tasted defeat, 5-0 in the promotion with one, draw. And that was, I believe, his short notice UFC debut against Zubaira Tukhugov. So clearly a very talented fighter in Lerone Murphy, but he has not fought 5-round fights like a guy like Edson Barboza has done. He's been in main events. He's been in big fights and big opportunities. So that's something that we want to keep in the back of our mind. But we also want to think about the fact that Lerone Murphy, he's had a couple of canceled bouts. Let's go look through it. Why? Lerone Murphy had an injury reported when he was supposed to fight Dan Ige earlier this year. That's interesting. I want to find out exactly what that injury was. I don't know that off the top of my head. Nathaniel Wood was forced to pull out of that fight. I think there was a little bit of heat on that one. Lerone Murphy withdrew from a scheduled bout with Nate Landwehr back in 2022. He had a visa issue against Charles Jourdain and a rescheduling as well. So he's had a little bit of bad luck. He had a canceled bout with Gabriel Benitez back in 2020 due to the coronavirus as well. So a lot of bad luck has befallen Lerone Murphy in terms of his matchmaking, in terms of just getting to the octagon, in terms of finding the right opportunities. But it does seem like the UFC has been putting younger guys in the position to go out there and make a statement with a win over Edson Barboza. And some guys have capitalized, some guys have not. Let's revisit the recent run of Edson Barboza, where he was able to take out Sodiq Yusuff, win a unanimous decision in a fight where he got hurt early. He got rocked a little bit, but he was able to land big shots on Sodiq. He was able to weather the storm. He was able to outlast him, land big shots, and do a great job. Then the Billy Quarantillo fight, Billy was backing him up, using his pressure, coming forward, bink, one knee up the middle, and that was all she wrote. Edson Barboza, just a classic knockout from him. Then we talked about the Bryce Mitchell fight. He gets dropped in that fight in the first round, and then he got, wrestled and grappled and dominated and really had no answers in that fight. I think it was 30-26 across the board. Then you look at the Giga Chikadze fight. He was having some success early. He was landing some shots. He was moving well, and he did appear to tire out. It seemed like fighting off the back foot and getting backed up by Giga Chikadze and getting hit and hurt by Giga Chikadze really taxed his cardio and really taxed his will to continue. So by round 3, we just didn't see the same Edson, and unfortunately got folded up in that spot. So that was a stoppage win for Giga Chikadze. And it's not like Giga Chikadze went on to, rout the rest of the division, right? We actually saw him struggle against Calvin Kattar, got absolutely obliterated in his next step up in competition. So I think that's something to keep in the back of our mind as well. The Shane Burgos win was obviously a great win at the time. I think it's not aged as well. I think that when I'm looking at this fight, the Dan Ige loss, not a great loss for Edson because he should have won it, and he kind of left that fight too close, let it hang in the balance, let Dan Ige recover when he got hurt in that fight. And that was savviness from Dan Ige. That was craftiness, but also just Edson dropping the ball there. Then you look at the Makwan Amirkhani fight, one of the only guys to not finish Makwan Amirkhani in the UFC. Let's go look at Makwan's run. And his losses in the UFC, he had 4 losses inside the distance, just 3 by decision. And one of them, unfortunately, was this most recent one against our guy Edson Barboza. So yeah, I think that when you're looking at a guy like Edson, he does have powerful striking. He is a knockout threat, but again, we just saw Billy Quarantillo get lit up in his most recent fight as well. He's kind of been struggling in his recent bouts. So I think that this is a spot where I like Lerone Murphy to get the job done. More often than not, as the more young guy, as the more durable guy, I trust his cardio, even though he hasn't done 5 rounds at a high clip. Because he's a young guy who's been pushing for these 15-minute fights and looking good, I think that he could probably push at a higher pace. You look at Edson Barboza's career, and, most of the time throughout his career, he has not been landing a very high level of strikes, a very high number, a very high total of significant strikes. And when you look back, the fight with Sodiq Yusuff, he landed 164 significant strikes, but he actually got outlanded in that fight on the numbers, so I do think it's interesting that even in these fights where he's winning and landing huge shots and rocking Sadiq, he still managed to get outlanded in that fight. He got outlanded by Bryce Mitchell. He got outlanded by Giga Chikadze. He outlanded Shane Burgos by 18 strikes, Billy Quarantillo by 2 strikes, Dan Ige by 1 strike, Paul Felder by 4 strikes. So he really doesn't distance himself from a lot of opponents. He kind of goes tit for tat. And I think if you do that with a young guy who can hit hard in his own right, who's got a lot of wins by knockout, who does have submission wins on his amateur scene as well. So it's not like he's a complete fish out of water on the ground. I think that Lerone Murphy has kind of shown he's a well-rounded threat. And I just think he's a young, hungry lion. So let's see how it fares. It's definitely a tough fight. It's a step up in competition, but that's certainly my lean in this fight. I don't know that I'd get to a money line pricing, at a minus 150 or whatever, but I do think that the under was interesting for me. I think, the best path for Edson to win this fight is to try and knock him out. And I think that Lerone Murphy, if he wants to capitalize on this opportunity, he wants to go out there and make a statement, stop a guy like Edson Barboza, and I think 4.5 rounds is plenty of time for these guys to get violent, somebody to get hurt, get finished. And typically I do go with underdogs in elite featherweight contests, but in this spot, my gut feeling is Lerone Murphy is going to win it. So yeah, I think that Lerone's going to get the job done, and that's the way I feel. I'll see if I can do a little bit more deep dive into the tape here, if anything changes my mind, but my gut says Lerone Murphy gets the job done, and I think he's just got a lot of momentum right now in this division. So let's see how it shakes out. I think the wins over Kulabau, he did finish Makwan Amirkhani, was having a competitive first round, came back out in round 2, snuffed that right out of there. So common opponent, he was able to get him out of there. Douglas Silva de Andrade, not an easy guy to beat, was able to go out there and handle business. Ricardo Ramos was able to clean him up in the first round, dominate that fight. And then Gabriel Santos, obviously a very close fight. So I think that's the one knock against Lerone Murphy. He hasn't always distanced himself from his opponents, but these are other young guys. These are other hungry killers, his contemporaries. And obviously they're not always as sharp as a guy like Edson Barboza, but I do think they're very well-rounded. So, for me, this is a great fight and fun, interesting matchup in the featherweight division, but maybe not as much star power as you'd expect from the UFC these days. So, hey, let's see how it shakes out at featherweight, but give me the undefeated Lerone Murphy to keep it as such. I think he's going to win another one here. Next up, guys, we got the co-main event. This one is going to be going down in the welterweight division. We've got Khaos Williams taking on Carlston Harris, and I think that this is a fun fight. We'll go to the fight numbers board first. We got Carlston Harris plus 115 over at Caesar Sportsbook, the best available comeback on this fight. And then minus 122, the favorite price tag here on Khaos Williams. We got the over-under here priced at minus 170 from Pinnacle Sportsbook to the under 2.5 rounds, plus 145 to the over at BetOnline. I think that this is, nice. Pepe thinks that this fight ends early, first 3. Shout out to the sharpest chat in the game, guys. If you're here, if you're commenting, you're part of the sharpest chat in the game. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Just Win Baby says, nothing scares me here. He thinks Murphy is going to win, so we agree on the winner there. What's good, Liam? Caught you live for once. What's up, Ian? I try to mix up the times a little bit so everybody gets a chance to say what's up, be a part of the sharpest live chat in the game. So I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for the support. If you don't mind, drop a like on the video as we get rolling here for this co-main event. But with that being said, guys, let's talk about the intangibles. We got 36-year-old Carlston Harris coming off of 2 straight wins inside the promotion, just 1 win in terms of momentum for Khaos Williams here. You got 30 years of age for Khaos, so he's the younger guy here by 6 years. We just talked about that in the main event. Very significant age gap between these two guys, but I do think it's a little bit more favorable for a guy like Carlston Harris because he's still just 36 years of age. 38 is that tipping point. If you read the book Fight Numbers, where fighters start getting knocked out at an alarming rate, 38 years of age and over is where that trend really picks up steam. So at 36, Carlston Harris, he's been knocked out before, but you look at the quality of competition, it's been by quality opposition, and he's beaten a lot of quality guys as well, submitted UFC black belts, submitted quality fighters, hurt, rock, knock guys out before as well. So Carlston Harris has just shown to be dangerous in a lot of positions. On the other side, Khaos Williams has shown himself to be quite durable. He's 5-2 in the UFC. Both his losses were close decisions. He lost to Michel Demoledor Pereira, who's been on a great run in his recent fights. He lost a split decision to Randy Rudeboy Brown, who's another quality fighter in this welterweight division, a fringe ranked guy. Michel Pereira, a ranked guy up in the middleweight division, I believe, coming off that last fight. So Rolando Bedoya, that last fight I thought could have went either way, but it was a fight where Khaos went out there and got a close one, was able to earn that. I think he was a big favorite going into that fight. He knocked out Miguel Baeza, a guy who has really struggled with his chin. He's a great professional fighter. He's got skills in all positions. He can grapple, he can strike, but his chin has just let him down in big moments and big opportunities, unfortunately. Then you look back, the Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight. Good win, but a win at a time in Abdul's career where he was really struggling, where he was having a hard time, where he was having problems outside the octagon, and a lot of different things going on in his life. Then Alex Morono, he put him in the box in the first round, but there's such a huge athleticism gap, such a huge speed gap between those two guys, and nobody knew what to expect from Khaos at the time. Morono probably would have tried to grapple or make it a different fight in terms of his setups in that fight if he had known that Khaos could just put you in the box so easily with that knockout power. And we've learned that Khaos is a dangerous guy, but if he doesn't find the knockout blow, then the fight's going to be very close. He's losing split decisions to Randy Brown. He's winning split decisions against Rolando Bedoya. He's winning decisions against Matthew Semelsberger, a guy who's, been on hard times in the division. He's losing decisions against Michel Pereira, a guy who struggled at times in the welterweight division. So shout out to Pepe. Says, I have a stack on Khaos at plus 105. I like this matchup style-wise. Fair play, my brother. Hunter says, Liam, brother, you can beat Phil Hawes in a street fight. I do not agree with you, but I appreciate the sentiments. I think that, that's a great line, jump, right, Pepe? Because obviously you bet it at plus 105. It's now minus 122, best available. So you did your job there. You've got an opportunity to bet both guys at plus money, to arb off some of your position, whatever. You just set yourself up for success here. So I credit you there. I think that's a great bet. But I do think that this is probably, a plus money or pass type of situation. I think it's a highly volatile fight, to tell you the truth. When you look at Khaos Williams' record, he's never been finished before in professional MMA. But I go back and I struggle to find who the most dangerous, quality opposition he's faced is. I think that, probably Abdul Razak Al Hassan is the most dangerous knockout threat, maybe a Matthew Semelsberger. He was able to beat both of those guys. But the other guys he's fought, they're more well-rounded. They're more, experienced vets. They're not really guys that go out there and kill people. And I do think that Carlston Harris has just shown that whether it's in round, 1, 2, or 3, he can be dangerous. He can find his positions where his front headlock is nasty, right? When you go out there, snatch a hold of those front headlock series, and you've got arms like Carlston Harris, he can kind of just reach and grab. If you ever notice, there's guys in wrestling that can grab Kratos from anywhere, because they got really long arms. They got a good squeeze. Some people are built for certain maneuvers. And I do think Carlston Harris is built for that front headlock, man. And he's also very good with the upper body throws. So he kind of has a very weird, janky MMA game where he goes out there, grabs a hold of people, moves them around physically in the upper body clinch, tries to trip their feet out from under them, knocks them off balance, pulls them in, throws them backwards. And you see a lot of really dynamic movement from him. That could be taxing. That could be tiring. He could end up fatiguing himself in this fight. The other thing is Khaos Williams can knock out any man, woman, or child. That's an expression I use a lot on this show. It's just in jest. But when you look, like, Khaos Williams clearly has big power. And one of the things I noted is he has good timing. If you go out there and throw a naked low kick against Khaos Williams and try and take one quick shot at him, then he will snipe people down the middle. And that is exactly what he did against both Alex Morono and Abdul Razak Al Hassan. They both went to throw, low kicks. They didn't set them up very well. And Khaos Williams read it, put him in the box, and that was the end of the fight in really brutal, violent fashion. So Carlston Harris has been knocked out in the UFC before, but that was by Shavkat Rakhmonov. And I do think that Shavkat Rakhmonov is a very quality fighter. I think that at the time I bet Carlston Harris because Carlston Harris, very quality fighter. But the difference was, younger guy, Shavkat was a killer, and he was also big and could match him in those clinch positions, could match him in the grappling. I think Khaos Williams' grappling is a little bit of an unknown. He does have wins by submission on his record, but just 2 of them. And he does come from a gym, Murcielago MMA. He's moved around a little bit, but I am somewhat suspect of the overall grappling pedigree. I'd like to see it tested before I buy in, especially at chalk. I think at the plus 105, you have good speculative investment there, but for me, it's a plus money or pass type of fight because it's extremely violent and volatile. Shout out to my guy, Mick Picks, a great capper, a guy with a great YouTube channel as well. I would encourage you guys to absolutely check it out. Check him out on Twitter as well. Shout out for the dono, my brother. He dropped a $20 dono in the chat. Says, "What's up, Liam? Finally able to catch some of a live show. Putting out content like this takes a lot of time and effort. Got to show some love. Appreciate you, my brother. It is absolutely my pleasure, my man. I'm here. I'm loaded with my coffee. I got Nogi coming up next. It's a great time to mention, guys, Roll Life Jiu-Jitsu. This is not a paid advertisement. This is my buddy's company, and I wear these every day. I will be wearing this today at Nogi after this. So how could I be in a bad mood? I'm looking good. I'm looking fresh. I'm feeling good. We got great fights to talk about. I got my first bet locked in for the week already and written up on Patreon. So, man, life is great. I can't complain about a single thing, and I appreciate you for the dono, my brother. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for rocking with me. I think that my overall gut lean, I'm going to go gut lean with either Khaos Williams by knockout or Carlston Harris by submission. What does that tell you? I'm leaning towards this fight not to go the distance. I think both these guys, extremely dangerous finishers, and I think that both of them can ask questions that the other really has to answer. Can Carlston Harris take a big punch from a guy who's dangerous, from a guy who's willing to throw low and high like Khaos Williams? And on the other side, can Khaos Williams grapple with a guy like this who's proficient, who's dangerous, who's got a specialty, and who's willing to go out there and force the issue? Make no mistake about that. Carlston Harris will go out there and force you to grapple and find out what time it is. Whether it's a win or a loss for Carlston Harris from that position, he's more than willing to go find out and test himself. And for me, that makes him an interesting underdog as well at the plus 115 spot. So interesting fight, great fight in this welterweight division, and one that I'm going to do a little bit more tape and due diligence. But getting the younger guy, at plus 105 here, can't be too mad at that with a 6-year age gap in your favor. Historically, that's going to be plus EV. Next up, guys, we got a great fight with my boy, Themba Gorimbo. We got to shout out our guy, Themba Gorimbo here. And why do we have to shout out Themba Gorimbo? That's a simple one, guys. I put out a tweet, 5 underrated fighters, 5 fighters that fly under the radar in the UFC that you really like. And on the list, Chase Hooper was on there. Chad and Hellinger was on there. Victor Hugo was on there. And you might be saying to yourself, man, these guys have been absolutely crushing it in the UFC lately. And I would be saying to you, yes, you are correct about that. And the other guy on that list was our boy Themba Gorimbo. And when you're looking at the reason why I think Themba's been doing such a great job, I think the guy is highly motivated. I think he's got an insane will to win. And I think he goes out there, really wants to push the action and go out there and find finishes. He's a highly motivated guy. He knows exactly what his why is. And he's got power in his hands. He's got a big build for this welterweight division. And he's been going out there and trying to stay active. Last year, he was able to get in the octagon. He got his finances in order. He kind of got his gym in order. He's training now in the U.S. He's been training at MMA Masters. He's been making improvements. And last time out, he said, I'm going to go out there and knock this guy out in the first round. And a lot of people said he's crazy. Why does he want to go out there and strike with Pete Rodriguez? He needs to take this fight to the ground. He needs a submission to win this fight. And Themba Gorimbo went out there and told people what time it was. He let people know that he can strike with this guy. He landed one of the most thudding right hands you will ever hear, guys. If you hear the right hand that just clapped the ear of Pete Rodriguez, it sounds like a gunshot goes off when Themba hits him with that right hand. He follows up on the ground, and that was the end of it. When you look into this fight, I try and handicap top down, bottom up, meaning I look at every aspect of it, right? I look at the market. I look at things like, the matchup. I look at things like the tape study. Try and, find any little grain of information that I can. And shout out to one of the guys in my Discord over at the Lab VIP. He did tell me, he was like, hey, check out this article about Brahimaj's injury. And I had heard that Brahimaj had an injury, but I hadn't read into it. So I read into the article, and it did talk about the fact that he had 2 and 3 months where he couldn't really feel his arm. He was having nerve problems in his arm as a result of pain in his back. He was having problems with his spine. So it just seemed like he was dealing with a lot in terms of his physical injuries. And that's backed up by the data as well. When you look at this fight card, guys, another thing I look at each and every week is how long these fighters have taken between this fight and their last fight. One thing fighters constantly talk about, if you listen to their interviews, is the fact that when you're not in the octagon, things can start to become unfamiliar. It can become more difficult. The rigors of the octagon, the pressures, the, calming your nerves, things like that, it becomes easier to do with frequency, right? Frequency of activity makes anything a little bit easier to stomach. But when you're out there infrequently, it can be hard to get up for these fights. It can be hard to get to the right warm-up. It's a lot to fine-tune and peak at the right time 2 years, 3 years out of the octagon. And so for Ramiz Brahimaj, he has the longest absence from the octagon of any fighter on this card. And Themba Gorimbo is actually making one of the fastest turnarounds on the card as well. So Themba's been staying active. He's been in the gym. He's been working. He knows that he needs to stay in there. And by the way, he said, my goal is to get the title by the end of the year. That's why he's saying yes to every fight right now, right here. Like, I want to take the next fight. And he went out there and knocked out Pete Rodriguez in the first round. So he's fighting like he's got a time limit, and he's going out there trying to hurt people. Now, on the other side of things, Ramiz Brahimaj, his skill set has been going out there and submitting people in the very first round. He's an extremely dangerous submission grappler. He does have good rear naked chokes. He does have pretty decent takedowns from the double leg as well. He can go out there, blast double into some people, get the takedowns going. But my questions are, when you've hurt your neck, when you've hurt your back, when you've hurt your arm, how are your takedowns going to look? How are your submissions going to look? How is your passing going to look? How are your grappling sequences going to look? Are you going to be potentially in compromised situations because of those injuries, because of a re-aggravation, for example? So I think all of that points me to, man, that's a little bit concerning. Now let's talk about some of the other things that we haven't touched on yet, like these measurables, okay? We've got a 77-inch reach on paper for our guy, Themba Gorimbo. That's a pretty damn long reach. Then you're looking at just 73 inches for Ramiz Brahimaj. So you would think at distance, Themba should be able to dictate with the jab, keep him at distance, keep him behind the line. And then if Ramiz is able to get in on the takedown, that's where it becomes a more interesting fight. Obviously, Ramiz, that's where he's going to want to put it. He is a guy that likes to go out there, wrestle, grapple. He has competed at the Pan Ams and high-level jiu-jitsu competitions before. I believe he was a purple belt, when he first got to the UFC. And he's come along, he's continued to progress. But when I look at Themba Gorimbo, his grappling is something that needed to improve defensively, because he had a lot of offensive success, and it kind of was a result of him being aggressive, being super aggro, but not having an ability to go out there and put in the hooks, not having an ability to go out there and kind of hold down these proper positions. And I think that he's understood now, hey, my best skill set is using my skills on the feet, beating people up at a distance, using my ability to use my length, my power, and go out there and take people out on the feet. And then if I'm able to hurt them, if I'm able to get them tired, if I'm able to outwork them, then I'm able to take them to the ground and have my success. We saw that against Takashi Sato. He dropped him first, then followed him to the mat and had his success. So I think that when you're looking at a guy like Themba Gorimbo, he needs to establish himself on the feet in this fight. And I think he can do that. I think he's going to do that. I think Ramiz is going to be a little bit, jittery and kind of need a moment to get his timing and a beat in the octagon because he's been out for so long. And I think Themba's going to give him no space, no time. I think he's going to get in his face. I think he's going to pump the jab. I think he's going to hurt him with shots early. And I honestly think he's going to force bad takedown attempts out of Ramiz Brahimaj and end up winning this fight. So, yeah, give me Themba Gorimbo, one of my guys, to keep the streak rolling for the under-heralded guys in this UFC. And I like these guys that, people don't always give a lot of credit to. And I think Themba gets hated on because The Rock took an interest in him. But the truth is, there's nothing he could do. All he could do is tell his story. And if people are inspired by it and people, enjoy what he has to say, then that's the way it is. And I do think Themba, is very clear about what his goals are. He's not just fighting for himself. He's fighting for his country. He's fighting for his family. He's fighting for his people. That's a lot of motivation to go out there and fight with. So at 33 years of age, with more professional experience under his belt, with a lot more frequency of activity, with a solid record as a favorite as well, 3-0 in major U.S. promotions as a favorite for Themba Gorimbo, I think he's going to get the job done in this matchup. I think it might be a difficult fight. He might be in some adversity early, but I believe in his heart and his toughness and his skills. And I think Themba's going to find a way to get the job done once again. So give me the answer, Themba Gorimbo. That's my answer for who's going to win the featured bout of the evening. Next up, guys, we've got a main card bout between Adrian Yanez, or Yanez, I think it is pronounced. I think he corrected people on that before. Shout out to him. But Adrian Yanez taking on Vinicius Salvador. And Vinicius Salvador comes out of the Hebas team. I remember thinking, the line was kind of wild on the Contender Series. And I thought he was going to submit Shannon Ross because of what I had seen of Shannon Ross on the regional scene, and because of the fact he was training out of the Hebas team. I believe he was a black belt under the Hebas team. We haven't seen much of his grappling, especially at the UFC level. And I don't think that it's shown itself to be extremely high level. However, what I will say is when you look at a guy like Vinicius Salvador, he has some power, he has some ability, but I do think he's very susceptible defensively. I do think he keeps his hands in a poor position. I think he can gas out at times. I'm not sure what this transition from 125 to 135 is going to look like for him exactly. So I do think that this is a tough fight on paper. And Adrian Yanez, on the other hand, he struggles immensely with the leg kicks, right? We've seen that, in that last fight against Jonathan Martinez, got picked apart, did get dropped. And I do think, when we're looking at a guy like Adrian Yanez, his boxing is crisp. His anti-grappling has checked out okay at the UFC level as well. When we look back, I believe it was Miles Johns he went 5 rounds with. Miles was trying to wrestle and grapple him the whole time and was able to get some takedowns, was able to get some control time against the, against the fence, right? But he wasn't able to really dominate him physically or force him down to the mat very often, force his hands to the mat. So I think that is a consideration for me, right? Is a guy like Adrian Yanez in this fight, he's not going to be at a size disadvantage. He's not fighting a veteran like Rob Font, a guy who's, outpacing him. He's not even fighting a guy like Martinez, who has more UFC fights and a little bit more diverse offensive arsenal, a guy who's proven himself in these decisions and these tough fights. I think that Yanez needed a little bit of a reality check. He's a good fighter, but he needed to realize, hey, I still got some holes in my game. He, unfortunately, guys, if you forgot, lost his coach, Saul Solis, a few years back. And Saul Solis was a pioneer of Texas MMA. He was his coach. He believed in him. He was a guy that supported him. And it could always be an adjustment period when you have a guy that, loses their coach and they need to, find new leadership and find new judgment. And I don't actually know where Adrian Yanez is training. I do want to find out exactly where he's training at for this fight. But I just think that the last couple of fights are pretty understandable. Rob Font just caught him in a fight where they were going back and forth, exchanging, both landing huge strikes on each other. And then all of a sudden, bam, he got caught, went down in round 1. Hey, hats off to Rob Font, legend, in the division. The guy's been around a long time. He's got a ton of wins in the division as well. So, hey, hats off to him. Then Jonathan Martinez, a guy 18-4 as a professional, very solid professional record. Before he had lost to Jose Aldo, he's 10-3 in the UFC. I mean, just sensational work. So I think that this is a fight where Yanez is being given a winnable fight. He's looking for his 6th win inside the promotion. He beat Tony Kelly, good win. Davey Grant, close fight, but is a very solid win. A guy who's like a fringe top 25 guy, a guy who knocked out Jonathan Martinez, for example. Randy Costa, guy's no longer with the promotion. He beat him. Beat Victor Rodriguez via KO 1 head kick, beat Gustavo Lopez via KO. Heili Alateng was unable to finish a guy like that. So I think that, Salvador, yes, he's been to decision in the UFC, but I did think that he looked gassed in those fights. And the guys that he's fighting, CJ Vergara, a guy that goes out there and has been known to, kind of flag in terms of his cardio, needs to fight very close, needs to go out there and eke out decisions, needs the other guy to gas out to keep it close and competitive. He did miss weight in that fight. Victor Altamirano, a guy who is also, known for being kind of flaky to the takedown defense, right? Pretty easy to go out there and put on the mat. And Vinicius Salvador instead is going out there having a competitive fight with him on the feet. And, really, again, not distancing himself there. So I think that the win over Shannon Ross doesn't tell me very much. The loss to Jafel Filo on the regional scene, I could forgive. But the other losses, Rafael Costa submitted him in the 2nd round. Luis Filo lost via split decision. So he's lost a number of fights outside the UFC as well, gotten finished in a number of fights outside the UFC. So I just think that when you're losing to the Vergaras and the Altamiranos of the division, kind of puts you on a certain level. And I think that Adrian Yanez has been better in the past than this. So for me, I think that Adrian Yanez is going to win this fight. I think he's probably going to finish it down the stretch. Shout out to Mark. He's saying red flag. Yanez is a quitter and a flake. Yanez minus 340, red flag, potential parlay buster territory. Hey, shout out to you. I don't hate the look, but for me, I just don't believe in Salvador. I don't see it in him. I'll look into the tape a little bit more, but we'll have to see because I don't see that. Shout out to Dirty Reg says, I hate who the UFC wants to win bid. It's lazy handicapping to me. I try and look at every angle, right? I talked about the height, the reach, the age, the matchup dynamics, but I'm also going to talk about who I think the UFC wants to win because it's a business, right? We're not just talking about, UFC sporting event, right? Where, nobody's trying to make $1 off this. They're putting this event on because they're trying to make money. So they're not going to get it right every time, right? You've seen how many times Cyril Gane and Francis Ngannou, great example. Dana White was not very thrilled about the outcome of that fight, right? The guy ended up leaving his company with the belt, but that's just the way business goes sometimes. Sometimes you can't get the result that you want, but more of the time, you can get the result that you want. That's what Dana White's trying to do. Dixon says, Liam, you're sounding a little biased to me right now. Talk about Themba's holes too. Yes, he's improving, but there's holes on his tape. Why is the Brahimaj line crashing? I can tell you why the Brahimaj line is crashing. People like the Brahimaj side, right? He's the Twitter pick of the week. I've seen, 5 accounts with big bets on Brahimaj minimum, public accounts that have a lot of followers, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Plus 170, plus 200, plus 225, whatever you open at, you're having a different conversation, but the line has crashed significantly. And I think, it's wrong, and so sometimes I agree with the line movement. Sometimes I disagree with the line movement. And in this case, Themba Gorimbo is a guy that's been active in the UFC. While this guy's been dealing with injuries and on the sideline and hasn't been fighting and has been losing to Court McGee, getting knocked down in the first round by Court McGee, of all people, Themba Gorimbo's been out there beating his contemporaries in UFC fights. The fight he lost against AJ Fletcher, he was a plus 270 underdog, made his UFC debut. And by the way, in that fight, did he not go out there and compete? Was it not a scrap? Was it not a close fight? He did lose the fight. He did get finished. But in that fight as well, he competed and had a good moment, as well. So I just look at a guy like Themba Gorimbo and say, I've been betting on him. He's been making me plenty of money. And now everybody has been lining up to fade him last time, with Pete Rodriguez. Pete Rodriguez is going to knock him out. He's got this power. He's going to hurt him. He's going to knock him out. He's going to expose his chin. And then what happens? Themba goes out there and absolutely stomps him, starches him in the first round. Why do you think they take a guy who's off for 2 years and put him against Themba Gorimbo? Maybe it's to expose Themba on the ground. Maybe they want Themba with 350,000 followers on Instagram and, a fun winning style, goes out there and gets finishes and then tells nice stories about all the good things he does for people. Maybe they want that guy to lose and they want, some random guy named Ramiz Brahimaj that has 16,000 followers that's been out for 2 years that doesn't have a meaningful UFC win yet under his belt. They want him to go out there and win. Maybe that is the case. But for me, they're kind of setting this fight up as, hey, Themba, here's a winnable fight. Let's see what you do with it. It's a fight. He's still got to go out there and prove it. It's against a tough guy like Ramiz that has wins by sub in the first round, but he's never beaten somebody in a fight that went past 2 rounds. Okay. He's never won a decision. Themba's won plenty of decisions. Themba's won a bunch of fights by submission. Ramiz has as well, but against how many quality opponents? Michael Gilmore? I mean, give me a break. Michael Gilmore is not a very good fighter for the UFC level. He was dealt with accordingly. He's no longer with the promotion. So the guys that he's beating aren't quality UFC fighters. So I just wanted to address that. I don't want to sound like I'm talking out of pocket, but I just tried to just speak to the facts of the matchup. And, they want plenty of people to win. And I actually disagree with my guy Rich here. They wanted Benoit to win. I don't think so. I think that they were comfortable with either guy winning that fight, right? On the one hand, Dustin Poirier is getting a title shot, Rich, right? So it's like if they hate Dustin Poirier, if they didn't want him to win, he wouldn't be getting the shot, but they think he's marketable. They think he could sell. They think he can go out there and turn it around and he got a big moment and a big highlight. They're happy about that. But they just wanted to have somebody get a big opportunity in the lightweight division, and then they have a selling point, right? If it was BSD that wins, easy selling point for a title shot. If it's Dustin that wins, selling point for a title shot. So I think that exactly. Dixon is on the money here. They wanted Rebecca to win. I agree with that. They want some of these people to win. They can't always get what they want. But what you could try and do is just handicap the fights. Hey, who do I think is going to win? Who do I think the UFC wants to win? What do I think the odds tell us? And try and move from there. So that's what I do each and every week on the show. And for me, Adrian Yanez, big favorite here, coming off of 2 straight losses. That does tell me a little bit as well. I don't think people are going to be as inclined to take him. I think a lot of people took those faceplant L's. They rode with Adrian Yanez the last couple times and they lost. So now they're going to say, hey, that's enough of Adrian Yanez. I'm done with this guy. Screw Adrian Yanez. He sucks. I'm riding with Vinicius, Salvador, but I just don't think he's the one. So for me, Adrian Yanez is the pick here. I think he's going to get it done. I haven't decided the method yet, but I think he's probably going to finish the fight. All righty, guys, back to the card. We've got our main card opener between Angela Hill and Luana Pinheiro. This is going down in the women's strawweight division, guys. And we've got Angela Hill, 39 years of age, looking like, she's been showing good performances in her recent bouts. However, she is 39 years of age. So the floor could come out at any time on our friend Angela Overkill Hill. On the other side, Luana Pinheiro, coming off of a brutal fight with Amanda Ribas 5 months ago. I'm surprised that was just 5 months ago, and she's getting right back in here. She did get absolutely dropped in her last fight She got hurt in that fight, but it was mostly a result of gassing out, guys. There was a lot of emotion going into that fight. They were former friends. They had lived together growing up. Like, there was a lot going into that kind of fight. Where they trained together when they were young. They both come from a judo and a jiu-jitsu background. So what did they do? You guys know, if it's two grapplers in the UFC, most of the time they go out there and stand and bang like it's nobody's business. And those two women fought a brutal stand-up fight. It looked at one point like Amanda Ribas was going to get finished. Amanda Ribas wore a ton of damage in that fight. She had welts, she had bruising, she had scarring, she had, hematomas, and she just found a way to win. She is a gamer. She's a tough chick, and she was able to push the metal to the floor for longer than Luana Pinheiro. She had more experience. She was able to fall back on that, and hats off to her. That was a great showing. Now you've got Luana Pinheiro, and in my humble opinion, guys, she should have a pretty substantial grappling advantage on paper compared to a girl like Angela Hill. Angela Hill has made leaps and bounds improvements in her grappling. You look at it in the past, it was nothing to speak of. It was terrible. The takedown defense was nothing to speak of. It was terrible. Now it's serviceable. But I do think that we gotta remind ourselves sometimes that Angela Hill can be hurt, cracked, rocked. Mackenzie Dern did put her down with the hands on the feet. She's been submitted twice in the UFC, her only finished losses. But again, Mackenzie Dern, very easily could have stopped that fight last time out via TKO, right? Like, if you look at that fight, guys, I had Mackenzie Dern via knockout at like plus 2,500 or something. And she beat her with, she beat her like she owed her money, right? Like, it was a really bad beatdown. Then the win over Denise Gomes, hey, hats off to Angela, right back on track for her. She did a great job in that fight, exploited a girl that did not have the ground game, that did not have the ability to compete with her on the ground. Shout out to Martian, says Hill did West Coast trials as well, getting more and more comfortable grappling. Absolutely. She's worked with J-Flow Judo as well. So for me, here's what's interesting about this fight. I think if this fight takes place, and I told you that somebody gets finished in the first round, I think most of us would agree Luana Pinheiro wins the fight. I think she's a really dangerous girl, and I do think that there's a chance she comes out here and just barnstorms Angela Hill with her judo, with her jiu-jitsu, with her abilities on the mat, as well as her power on the feet and her wild swinging punches. She goes out there and goes for broke. She's willing to take chances, take risks, hurt people. Now, on the other side here, what I find interesting and potentially sneaky is Angela Hill late in this fight could come on. We just saw it with Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas had a not fucking off attitude, and we've seen Angela Hill gas over 5 rounds, but typically over 3 rounds, she tends to pull it together. We saw her against Amanda Lemos offer a very good product late in that fight in rounds 2 and 3 after getting front kick to the face and nearly knocked out. So we've seen, that same kind of dynamic where we saw Ribas get hurt early and then come back and rally against this girl Pinheiro. Now Pinheiro, on 5 months turnaround, she did not take very much time off here after a brutal fight, after a lot of damage incurred, and she's fighting a girl who's capable of landing 100+ significant strikes, who's going out there landing a lot of shots, who's out there willing to throw, who's out there willing to exchange in the grappling. So I think in the early going, everything favors Pinheiro. I think she's more athletic. I think she's more strong. I think she's a little bit faster. I think she could hurt her. I think she could get takedowns. I think she could get a submission. Outside of round 1, I think it's a crapshoot, and I think it starts to favor Angela Hill again. So for me, I'm not going to get to an Angela Hill pre-fight bet. I would rather wait and see how this fight is going after 1 round and then try and enter an Angela Hill live at a plus money tag, if anything. But that's the way that I feel about this fight. I don't have the strongest thoughts here. This is one I will also go to tape on. And try and have a better opinion for bets and banter tomorrow. But I will just say, I sent my idea board to the Patreon earlier, and I did have a couple ideas about this fight on the Patreon. Just a lot of them just in the range of violence, where I just feel like the violence props are maybe a little bit off on this fight. So something, if you guys want to dig through the prop market yourself, maybe you find some value there. But just want to make sure I don't show my cards before I get my money down myself. You know what I'm saying? Next up, guys, we got the prelims to talk about, and I want to just close out with our odds for the main card. I did not give odds for a couple of those bouts, so I wanted to make sure that we let you know. Angela Hill, minus 136. Of course, these are according to our friends over at Fight Numbers. If you guys are interested in getting the best information up to date real-time information. You could use my code for a 30% discount. In the description box below is all the information that you will need. But again, the comeback on Luana Pinheiro, best available is plus 129. That's at Pinnacle Sportsbook. And for Adrian Yanez, it is minus 350 over at Bet365. Vinicius Salvador, the comeback, plus 310 over at Bet Online. I believe that's the Bovada signal. So shout out either way. Great stuff, guys, and great work from the guys over at Fight Numbers. I know their team as well. If you guys are looking for their bets, their information absolutely crushed it over the weekend. Pepe, Sylvia, Evan, Ozzy, very sharp individuals, and hoping to have our guy Ozzy P on the show in the very near future as well for a guest spot. We've been trying to conspire for one of these for a very long time, so hopefully we'll be able to make that work. But I was speaking to him a little bit about that as well, so something to look forward to. But with that being said, guys, let's fire through these prelims where we've got Nolan coming to take on Victor Martinez. And this is an interesting spot because Nolan, the much younger fighter here, just 7 professional bouts under his belt. And he did lose his UFC debut, unfortunately, getting knocked out. He got finished in the first round. He was very confident, extremely confident. He was a massive favorite taking on Nicholas Mota, and Nicholas Mota needed the win. It was a big motivation spot for him, and he came out there and showed that he still got it. After that Trey Ogden fight, was able to get the big knockout, was able to get his, striking game going. And Nolan just took no regard for his defense, right? He kind of just went out there and bumbled, through with reckless abandon, wanted to make it a fight, and really just didn't respect Mota's power at all. And he paid a dear price for that, right? He got finished quickly, easily in that fight. But I don't think that Nolan is a bust. I don't think he's a terrible fighter. I think he's an emotional guy. I think he's a 24-year-old arrogant son of a bitch. And I think he got humbled in that last fight. That's the truth. And I think he's a good fighter, right? And I really respect his game. So coming into that fight, I thought he was a tough guy, a solid guy. I thought he was going to beat Mota. And I think if they extend that fight, he probably does beat Mota more often than not. But the problem was Mota had been seasoned. He's fought really good guys. He's been humbled before. He's been disciplined before. He's been beat up. He's lost the big fights before. And that's the education you need sometimes in this fight game. 6-1 now. Nolan has a big chip on his shoulder. He's got a lot to prove. But he's another guy that's coming back here. The last time that he stepped inside the octagon, let's take a look. That was January of this year. So another really quick turnaround for a guy coming off a knockout loss, but he didn't incur a ton of damage there. It wasn't like he got beat up, for 15 minutes and then finished. It was a very quick flash knockdown type of deal. So hats off to him there. But I look at this fight and I say to myself, man, Victor Martinez, 13-5 as a professional. He's been finished in 4 out of 5 professional losses. Finished by Luke Flores back in the day. Finished by Sonny Luque and Agapito. Maybe that's it. Agapito Perez in his first bout. So he got finished a couple bouts right off the rip. Then he rattled off a couple wins, got finished by Luke Flores via armbar. Then he got knocked out by Jordan Levitt in the first round. And that seemed to be like, where a lot of people were like, man, this guy is not for real. And I do have my questions about him, right? I don't think he has any one win that stands out as, man, this is a fantastic win. Lost a split decision to Eric Ghost Pepper Gonzalez, fine fighter, but I don't believe he's stuck around in the UFC as well. So for me, Nolan, does he have any one standout win? I guess not. Bogdan Grad was 11-1 on the Contender Series. That's a solid enough win, but he had a decent enough amateur record. And he has now 2 losses by knockout, so that's concerning, right? One in the amateur ranks, one in the professional ranks. We want to make sure that Nolan is not a chin liability moving forward. But I think it was a little bit of arrogance and a little bit of him getting caught, being a young guy, being a little bit out over his skis. And I do think that we could see a Nolan, kind of standout performance here. I do think he come out here and make a statement. He's a dangerous fighter, and a lot of people are expecting him to win this fight by knockout. I think that we could see 2 guys that both got knocked out and are a little bit more conservative in this fight. Maybe one guy looks to mix in the grappling a little bit. And the other thing is, I think when you got a long, lanky guy, the possibility for submission is always there. We talked about Victor Martinez, 2 losses by submission on his record. Nolan, no wins by sub as a pro, couple as a amateur, and definitely a guy with good defensive grappling instinct. So when guys shoot in on him, he's looking for that front headlock. He's looking to sprawl. He's looking to get, people extended. He's looking for go behinds. I don't think he's a bad grappler by any means. I believe he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. I forget the name of his team, Compton Training Center. That's what it is. So local guy, gets a lot of the focus and the attention at the gym as well. And I do think that Tom Nolan has a point to prove in this fight. So let's see how this one turns out for him. But I'm going to go ahead and give Tom Nolan one more chance here, pick him to win this fight. I thought the Moda fight was going to be a tougher test, and this one seems like they're giving him a little bit more of a layup type of opportunity, but he's still got to go out there and prove it. He hasn't proven shit in the UFC yet, so the price tag is not something I want to go lay, but I think he's going to go win. Next up, guys, we got a fight where I do not know a ton about these guys, but here's what I do know. We've got George Tokkos, and this guy was a massive favorite against Mingyang Zhang on the road to UFC, and he got knocked out, guys. That's a brutal knockout loss. If you guys go back and revisit it, absolutely horrific stoppage for Zhang. That is what told me that Zhang was going to beat Brenson Ribeiro. Good fighter, Brenson Ribeiro, but a guy that I just felt like he was good but overmatched against Mingyang Zhang. And Mingyang Zhang can tank damage. Tukos landed a ton of huge shots on him, but the problem is Mingyang Zhang can eat these big shots, no sell them, and then keep coming forward and knock your head off. So that's a really tough guy to fight, right? Mingyang Zhang has been knocked out before, but in his recent fights, he's just been soldiering damage like it's no big deal and beating people up and knocking them out. So that for me was like kind of forgivable, but he also got a knockout loss against Ty Gorder back in 2020. So 2 losses via stoppage for our guy Tokkos here. He is a short notice fighter, right? Accepted this on really short notice. Been trying to get to the UFC for a long time. I watched a couple interviews that the guy did. I believe it was for Gracie University or something like that. But he had said, like, I've been trying to make it to the UFC. He was at the fight, the Institute and the Apex Center and all these places. He's cornered guys in the UFC. So he's been around the octagon for a long time. He knows what to expect. He was on the road to UFC. It's basically a UFC level fight, just not in front of a crowd. So I think that in the Apex here, he should be ready to go. But he's got a tough challenge here. He's got a guy with more professional experience here under his belt, in Oumar Sy. Or actually, am I correct about that? No, excuse me. Oumar Sy is going to have a little bit less professional experience, but he's a younger guy. He's 28 years of age, 9-0 as a professional, undefeated fighter, 10-3 for the Tukos side here. And he's also going to have some pretty big size advantages. He's going to be 1 inch taller in terms of height, according to Tapology. He's going to have a 9-inch reach advantage, according to Tapology as well. Let me pull up UFC stats and see if this fight is listed, because I want to make sure I'm not giving you guys bad information here. Yeah, they don't even have Oumar Sy measured yet, but they do have Tukos listed at 75-inch reach and 6'4" on the height. So all that would check out. And yeah, it seems like Sy is going to be the much bigger guy. Sy to me seems like a good athlete. He seems strong. He seems like a guy who can go out there and get takedowns, right? He's blast doubling all these guys on film that I'm watching. And then on top of that, we're seeing that, he's able to go out there and land big shots in the feet as well. He can knock people out. He's got some footage of him putting people through the ropes, landing big, scary knockout shots. So I think that this is a volatile fight, but I would probably lean towards Oumar Sy here getting the job done. He is the guy that the UFC was trying to sign. Obviously, a lot of people want a foot in the door with the UFC. They're willing to accept a short notice fight. They're willing to kind of take a disadvantageous opportunity. This guy was 3-0 in KSW, has wins in Aries as well, wins in Octagon, wins in Eagle FC. So he's kind of bounced around different regional promotions, but he's fought some guys with experience. Ildemar Alcantara had a bunch of professional fights. I think he fought in the UFC way back, if my memory serves. Ildemar Alcantara. Let me go ahead and look here. Ildemar Alcantara. Yeah, absolutely. He fought Albert Tumanov, Igor Arujau, Kenny Robertson, a couple different guys. So yeah, he's stuck around the UFC for a little bit. Ildemar Alcantara, got a win over him, got a win over Luis Henrique da Silva, another former UFC fighter. So Oumar Sy has been out there fighting UFC level guys, submitting them in the first round, knocking them out in the first round from the back mount. So again, like I mentioned, the takedowns, the ground and pound, the submission game, it's all kind of looked to check out to me. So does he look like the best fighter in the world? No. But does he look like the guy who's prepared, athletic, probably a little bit more dangerous? Yes. Tukos is going to have to rely on his veteran savvy. He's probably going to have to try and get this fight to the ground, get on top. I would think that you don't want to be underneath a guy like Oumar Sy. You want to try and put him on his back. Yes, Ian, this fight did just get added. Shout out to Dixon says Oumar is Sadabu's brother. Obviously, yep, Sadabu Sy, the guy from PFL. So quality fights, but for me, this is one, I don't even know if we have a line for this. Let's go look at our friends at Fight Numbers. I'm not even seeing a line for this fight. For whatever it's worth, guys, that last fight we discussed, Tom Nolan minus 450 via Bet365. Victor Martinez plus 380, the comeback over at Caesars Sportsbook. So there you have it for that last fight. But yeah, we don't even have a line here on fight numbers for this fight. So shout out. I think that this is a great spot. I want to say shout out to Beaver Covington, says, Liam, bro, if you're in the UFC, I would bet on you all day. Love the picks. I appreciate you, my brother. Thank you for the support. Let's Cash says, Money Mills, I appreciate you, my man. Liam, hope he's not the next Walter Walker. I hope so too. Although I told you, Walter Walker, I told you don't trust that guy. Lukas Bresky was getting no love in that week. It's not 3 a.m. Why is Liam on? I'm trying to get it out early for you guys today, before no-gi, before I go, roll some jiu-jitsu, trying to get the show rocking and rolling for everybody. So I appreciate you guys being here. And I'm just scrolling through the chat. I know my guy Mason is in here as well. Couldn't do it without him each and every week. One of the sharp minds that I go back and forth with. So shout out to everybody who's been, dropping knowledge. We had a big dono as well earlier from my guy Mick Pick. So just shout out to everybody who's been rocking with us from the very beginning. I guess I'm going to lean with Oumar Sy here as the more prepared party, who's a little bit more marketable, but we'll wait and see exactly how I feel about that fight upon a little bit further review. I was able to watch some highlights. I was able to watch a couple quick fights from these guys, but wasn't able to watch their full body of work, and that can often be what makes the difference in betting value. So next up, guys, we got a women's bantamweight contest. It's Tamires Vidal taking on Melissa Gatto, and Melissa Gatto is 3 years older here, 28 years of age compared to just 25 years of age for Tamires Vidal. So I feel like not a significant age advantage one way or the other in this matchup. Then on the height front, you're going to see a 1-inch advantage for Tamires Vidal. That will be canceled out by the 1-inch advantage on the reach for Melissa Gatto. And I think of Melissa Gatto as a much better fighter than Tamires Vidal, truth be told. I think of Tamires Vidal as a little bit of Fugazi, a little bit of a phony. She beat Ramona Pascal, but it was a somewhat competitive fight. And for me, that was a big concerning mark against her, because Ramona Pascal is a tough girl, but she's really just not proven at the UFC level. She's not very quality for the UFC level. She did not have very much experience coming into the UFC. So I think that when I look at this fight, the Aylin Perez fight, that was a beatdown from Aylin Perez. It was an absolutely one-sided performance, I felt, leading up to the stoppage, where it was a disqualification due to illegal knees. Aylin Perez was too aggressive. Tamires Vidal was too timid, did not want to continue. And so I'm not holding it against her. I'm just saying that fight did not look like a good mark in her favor. It did mark her as a potential future fade in my book. Then in 2019, she got submitted by Carol Hossa in round 3. Guys, Carol Hossa cannot finish her dinner. She cannot finish her laundry. She has 6 finishes and 11 decision wins. So she's almost doubling up her finish wins with her decision wins. Carol Hossa, and she was able to go out there and finish Tamires Vidal early in her career, granted. But then Montserrat Rendon, who I believe I commented during that fight live, she looks like she is throwing punches underwater. She is still able to go out there and beat Tamires Vidal, which, again, for me, was just an indictment of where she's at. I don't think she's very skilled. I don't think she's very high level. I think Gatto's faster. I think she's been fighting the higher level of competition. I think she's better on the ground. I think she's better on the feet. I think she's got better wrestling. I think she's going to audit her everywhere. And so I'm not going to lay the minus 250 chalk. I don't do that. That's not how I get down. That's not my path to, financial freedom. But I do think that this is a spot where I like Melissa Gatto to use her superior skills in all positions to dominate where this fight takes place and win the fight. So give me Melissa Gatto to win. Next up, guys, we got Abus Magomedov taking on Warlley Alves. And this is a fight where I think they're trying to give, Abus Magomedov a bit of a bounce back spot. But it's not going to be easy, right? You do have a dangerous guy in Warlley Alves, a guy who kind of is hit and miss, right? He comes and goes, but currently 8-7 in the promotion, 1 loss away from being a 500 fighter. And that's disappointing because you look at his early run, guys, he was very quality, comes off of the Ultimate Fighter Brazil, beats Wagner Silva, beats Mauricio Alexander, beats Alan Juban, finishes Nordine Taleb, finishes Colby Covington. And that's where it all fell off the rails, guys. Brian Barberena was able to beat him. Brian is no longer with the company. Kamaru Usman was then able to decision him pretty dominantly, had his way with him in the wrestling and the grappling, so kind of showed the levels there. He beat Salim Touri, no longer with the promotion. He beat Sultan Aliyev, no longer with the promotion. He got finished by James Krause. We'll talk more about him one channel, don't you wait. In the 3rd round. little bit of this up and down style. Mandy Brown finishes in via triangle choke in the second round. And when's the last time you heard of somebody losing a fight via triangle choke in the UFC? You know, it's very uncommon. So that for me is concerning. Loses to Munir Lazez, gets finished, or excuse me, beats Munir Lazez. That was his last win inside the UFC. That's what I meant to say. Then he gets finished two of his next 3 fights against Jeremiah Wells. He gets beat, finished in that fight, knocked out in the second round against Ikram Alaskarov, knocked out in the first round, flying knee and punches, brutal knockout loss for Warlley Alves. And then Nicholas Dalby was able to beat him by split decision. That is actually the only Warlley Alves fight I've ever bet on, guys. I bet Nicholas Dalby in that spot. I bet him by KO in that spot, and he still found a way to go to decision there. So Nicholas Dalby is a lover of the decision, a lover of the over. But in any case, you look at this, Abus Magomedov guy, and he clearly has finishing ability, right? 14 wins by knockout, 6 wins via submission, 2 losses via every method, right? So he's got a pretty balanced approach to the game, but his knockout is his upside. His most recent wins prior to coming to the UFC were all by submission, right? 2 wins via submission, his most recent wins prior to coming to the UFC. And then he knocked out Dustin Solsvitz in the first round, and he's lost 2 fights since then. But you look at the quality of competition. Sean Strickland, former champion, right? A guy who won the belt after that fight. Caio Barajo, a guy who is on his way up the division, a guy who's ranked in the top 15 now, I believe, coming off of his win on Saturday. So again, just seeing a lot of great, adaptation from a guy like Abus Magomedov. He went from gassing out in, 5 minutes against Sean Strickland to looking like he had the cardio to fight at least 10 hard minutes against Caio Barajo, right? So step in the right direction, right? Small improvements. Now, I think both these guys are cardio nightmares. I would not trust chalk in this fight, period, point blank, because I don't trust these guys to have the 15 minutes they need to push. But for me, Abus Magomedov is an interesting play here, in terms of his ability to go out there and potentially mix this fight up, because I think he showed his cardio was trending in the right direction, and we've kind of seen Warlley's cardio trending in the wrong direction. We also know that Warlley is the smaller guy here. Coming into this matchup, you look at the size discrepancy, 6-inch reach advantage for a guy like Abus Magomedov. He should have as well a 3-inch height advantage. Both these guys are 33 years of age, so no substantial age gap between these two, but Abus, the bigger fighter, I think both these guys can be a little bit flaky at times. So for me, it's a fight where, again, I wouldn't want to get caught out over my skis with a huge chalk price on Abus, but I feel like it's going to end violently. And that's where I'll leave it. Good fight, though. So I lean towards Abus, and I think somebody's going to get finished in this fight, and I would not lay the chalk. That's the summary notes if you needed them for that fight. All right, guys, 3 left to go, and we'll take a swig of the coffee. If you guys haven't, go ahead and drop a like on the video. I appreciate the support. If you guys have comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, go ahead and drop those down below. I was going to say this before the video. I thought of this. If you guys leave 20 comments saying you want a Bellator breakdown, I will actually handicap Bellator this week. My guy Patchy Mix is fighting. I normally ignore Bellator, but if I get 20 comments saying, please, do a Bellator breakdown, I will absolutely do it. So there you have it. We'll put the offer on the table, a little bit of incentive as well to drop a comment down below. So cheers to you guys. In any case, Piera Rodriguez taking on Arianne Carnelossi. And this is an interesting spot because Arianne Carnelossi kind of fits a system for me, right? Which is that she's the younger woman, right? And, not by any substantial amount, right? They're about the same exact age, but she's the younger woman as the age parity, right? They're the same age, but she has much more professional experience. She's had 17 professional bouts, just 10 for Piera Rodriguez. Now, Piera Rodriguez is going to be an inch taller. She's going to have about an inch in reach as well. So she should have a little bit of a size advantage in this spot. But looking at Arianne Carnelossi, she's a powerhouse. You know what to expect, right? The big biceps. She's a strong girl. She's got, good grip. And she's gone out there before and mixed it up with these chicks, right? She can go out there and fight good girls. Didn't get finished by Lupi Godinez. Got finished via cut stoppage against Angela Hill and got finished via armbar, I believe, in her first fight back in 2014 against Amanda Hebos. But other than that, she went on a huge run. She beat 2 women that would go on to make the UFC. Ketlin Souza made the UFC. Gloria De Paula made the UFC. So these are UFC level fighters that she was beating on the regional scene on her way up, loses to Angela Hill, who's a very credentialed, seasoned woman within the division, and then beats Na Liang, kind of a free win, beats Estela Nunes, a very winnable fight within the division, and then loses to Lupi Godinez, who's another very quality fighter in the division, a girl who has ups and downs, but is certainly a hard out for almost all the women in the division. So I think of Arianne Carnelossi as a tough challenge. A woman that's going to go out there and test you physically, right? Not going to make it easy. And Piera Rodriguez is the more equipped woman you would think, right? She has a nice amateur and pro record combined, just one loss. That was her most recent bout. She got submitted by Jillian Robertson, but Jillian Robertson, I believe, is the leading, submission fighter in the women's side of the game. So, Jillian Robertson, obviously very talented in that department. She beat Kay Hansen, another jiu-jitsu fighter. She beat Sam Hughes, was able to dominate in some of those positions. She beat Valeska Machado. But I've not altogether been blown away by her game. I think a lot of it is taking people down, using her strength and physicality. And I think it's going to be hard to do that against a woman like Arianne Carnelossi. Arianne Carnelossi is pretty strong. Arianne Carnelossi is pretty physical. And I think that when you're going out there trying to leverage your strength and your offensive wrestling and grappling and takedowns, and you're a gasser, a known gasser, it just doesn't strike me as a dominant type of display. So I'm looking at the lines right now for this fight. Plus 195 over at Circus Sportsbook is the best comeback on Arianne Carnelossi. You're looking at a minus 210 favorite price tag on Piera Rodriguez. And I think that this fight could go either way. So for me, this is a fun fight and a good scrap, but it's not one where I would feel immense confidence. Arianne Carnelossi is coming off a little bit of a layoff, I believe. 1 year, layoff for Piera Rodriguez in this spot, and about 2 years of layoff for Arianne Carnelossi. So Carnelossi definitely a little bit longer outside the octagon, but I do think that, post USADA, I'll be curious to see just how big those biceps could get by fight time on Saturday. Oh boy. Next up, guys, let's talk about Alateng Heili taking on Clayton Rodriguez. And to do so, we'll take a good old swig of the coffee. Shout out to the odds mug. Shout out to my boy Z's MMA for the odds mug, an MMA original. If you guys have been around the community for a long time, you know who I'm talking about. But we got the intangibles here. We got 32-year-old Alateng Heili taking on the 28-year-old Clayton Rodriguez, and Clayton is going to be coming in with a half-inch reach advantage. There's nothing else to report from a height and reach standpoint. These guys are at virtual parity, so they're going to be about the same size here. And that's interesting because you see Clayton Rodriguez, he came up from 125 pounds. Guys, he was a flyweight fighter, and then he went out there, lost a split decision against CJ Vergara. He figured, hey, cutting too much weight, diminishing myself, putting myself in hard times. And then he comes in and he misses weight against Shannon Ross, and he knocks him out in the first round with the flying butt. If you guys have not seen that fight, you don't have to take my word for it. Go watch it. He hits him with the flying butt. Shannon Ross goes down. That's when I knew Shannon Ross had one of the worst chins, unfortunately, in high-level professional mixed martial arts. However, when you look at the next fight against Farid Basharat, you guys can go back and check the receipts on this. On this channel, I talked about, people said earlier today, right? Now we're going to revisit this. People said earlier today, they're like, Liam, don't tell me who you think the UFC is going to win. That's lazy capping. And I told people at the time, I said, I think the UFC put this fight together because Clayton Rodriguez missed weight against Tatsuro Taira. He missed weight against and blew up a fight against Tatsuro Taira. So he's supposed to fight him, missed weight, blew it up. Had a problem with Vinicius Salvador, had a problem with Cody Durden, had a bunch of these canceled fights and all these different problems. Missed weight against Shannon Ross, missed weight against Tatsuro Taira. So what do? They move him up to 135, and they don't just move him up because they can move you up, right? Like they say, hey, no more fighting at 125. You keep missing weight, that's the end of that. So now either we're offering you your next fight at 135 or we're done with you. Okay, there you go. So now he's moving up to 135. And then they say, how about you fight this guy Basharat, right? And Basharat is not that well known. But what is he? A hammer on top. He's got excellent grappling. He's got excellent wrestling. He makes people look bad. He made Damon Blackshear, a good black belt, look very average, right? He just dominated him on the ground at points in that fight. So you look at a guy like Basharat and you say, man, this guy's sound. And they put him out there against Clayton Rodriguez. And I said, I think he's going to go out there and embarrass him. And he did go out there and absolutely embarrass him. Now, Clayton Rodriguez is now off the hook, I think, right? He went out there and paid his debt, right? It was like he went to jail. He paid his debt to society. And now he's got not an easy fight, but a winnable fight, right? And this is a fight with a guy who's about his same age, about his same size, that doesn't have a massive grappling advantage, right? So could he wrestle him? Could he try and take him down a little bit? Yes. Has Alateng Heili shown that he's a lethal submission threat or anything like it? No, he has not. So for Clayton Rodriguez on the other side here, he does not have the most lengthy professional record, but listed as a Team Nogueira fighter. He's 2-1 to the submission career. He's 4-0 career to the knockout. So he's never put down with strikes, right? Never finished with strikes. He got submitted by a guy who's just levels above him on the mat last time out, but we saw him put down Shannon Ross. That's fine. We saw him lose a close one with CJ Vergara. CJ Vergara kind of snakes out close decisions. That's his path to victory in his fights more often than not. Then you look at the Santo Curatolo fight, fine win, nothing to write home about. He finished his fight before that against an undefeated opponent, via submission. So I don't think this guy is totally busted as a prospect. I do think Clayton Rodriguez is probably on juice just by looking at the pictures of him. The guy looks, stacked. The guy looks like he's in incredible shape. Maybe that was part of the reason he couldn't make one under 25 pounds. But I do think that we've kind of seen Clayton, lose, get embarrassed, get a little bit exposed. And now I think that this is a winnable fight for him, but I don't think it's going to be easy. So for me, I'm leaning towards the Clayton side, but I want to do a little bit more tape, a little more due diligence, make sure all my ducks are in a row, but I'm leaning towards Clayton. I do think Alateng Heili, his path to winning this fight is probably by decision. I think that's the way he wins this fight. And that's kind of the way I see it. I think both guys could try and exploit each other's grappling, but I just don't know that Alateng Heili is going to have, enough chops in that department. So shout out to Ian Campbell, says Alateng has never landed a single takedown in the first 2 rounds of a UFC fight. Shout out to DFS by the numbers. Yeah, he's gotten a bunch late in fights. I also will say he did break my guy Chad Hellinger's nose. So Chad Hellinger, good fighter, and I did point him out before. Chad fought him, and Chad said he got clipped on the nose early and he wasn't able to recover, wasn't able to grapple and use his ancillary skills like he wanted to. So he said he thinks he could win that fight on a rematch, and basically just got caught early, and it made for a very difficult fight for him. So for me, I think that this is a close and competitive fight, but yeah, I think that, either guy could win this one, but Alateng Heili definitely has more professional experience. He's just the older guy in a division that favors the young. So leaning towards Clayton. I think he's going to be a little fast, a little technical, little too heavy-handed. All right, and last but not least, guys, we got Vanessa Demopoulos taking on Emily Ducote, and I want to pull up betmma.tips here because I like the previous bets on these fighters. I like looking into that, and I have made profit on one of these fighters, and I have not made profit on the other one of these fighters, okay? So one of the fighters is Emily Ducote, and I made a nice chunk of change on Ducote over Penne. I thought that was an easy fight. Going into it, but then it ended up playing out slightly closer than I thought. She did win the fight. She did win it pretty convincingly, but there were just a couple sketchy moments, and she did get tagged a little bit. And I was like, man, that's an interesting look. Then I thought she was going to beat Lupita Godinez. I put 1 unit on her against Godinez, and Ducote fell short in that spot. So profitable on moneyline bets so far, betting on Emily Ducote, but a little bit too much trust, a little bit too much confidence. She dropped the ball against Lupi. Lupi looked good that fight, and kind of just showed a little bit of a level gap. Then I bet her by sub against Ashley Yoder. I bet her inside the distance against Ashley Yoder, and unfortunately, she was not able to deliver. She did beat her up. She did land a lot of good shots there, but Ashley Yoder proved barnyard tough and was able to take the shots, keep coming forward. I did lose some coin on Emily Ducote and Jessica Penne to go under 2.5. So I've been expecting more finishing upside from Ducote than what we've seen. So for me, it's about adjusting my expectations down a little bit, I think, on the Ducote side. On the other side here, Vanessa Demopoulos is somebody I've continued to make coin on because people doubt her and, kind of poo-poo her success at every turn. Now, she's definitely won some close competitive decisions, but I think when you look at how she wins them by being active in all positions. When she's on the feet, she doesn't have the prettiest striking, I'll tell you, but she can take a good punch, and she can keep coming forward and throwing offense. She is not afraid to get hit. She's not afraid to land her own shots. So I do think she goes hard and tries to throw and tries to win. And I think she has a will to win. And I think she's not afraid to fight. And I think on top of all that, she has shown in the past, right? She can get hurt like she did in the Silvana Gomez Juarez fight and still be dangerous off her back with her submissions. We've also seen she can go out there, land elbows, and cut people open off her back win rounds, score rounds convincingly off of her back by outmaneuvering her opponent. When you have a dangerous armbar, when you have a dangerous triangle, when you have these series that you can offer off your back, when you have an inversion game, it makes it trickier for somebody to just hang out on top of you and hold you down. Because when they're trying to do that, you could throw up submission attempts, you can control posture, you can use overhooks and underhooks to sweep off balance, make them insecure with their positioning, and then you can land strikes from all different positions. And I do think Vanessa Demopoulos is an older woman. She's 35 years of age, but she's not, showing huge signs of regression, right? Like her fights against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, that fight did not look great, but I think she had some personal problems going into that fight. She missed weight for that fight, 34 years of age. I think she was between gyms. Now I'm looking at a girl who is 4-2 in the UFC, 5-2 in the LFA, and not a bad fighter by any means. Lost to Corey McKenna way back in the day on the Contender Series, just getting out-wrestled, out-grappled, a close fight. Just got taken down a little bit there. I don't think she's a bad fighter. And Murata is a pretty talented girl. And I bet her plus 270, plus 300 in that spot. I was surprised to get that price. I bet her plus 150, I think, against, or maybe it was plus 115 against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Let me pull this up on BetMMA.tip, so I'm not speaking out of turn. Yeah, I bet her plus 225 against Jinh Yu Frey. I bet her plus 115 against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. And I bet her plus 270 and plus 300 against Kanako Murata. So I've been making a lot of coins betting on Vanessa Demopoulos. And I've just lived by the mantra, never, ever, ever fade a stripper in Las Vegas. I'm not telling you guys to go bet, Vanessa. I'm just saying fading a stripper in Las Vegas, guys. Is that something that you want to try and do with your hard-earned money? It's certainly not for me. And I've had a lot of success as a result of that theory and that strategy. And, whether that comes down to the judges, whether that comes down to the, announcers giving her favorable treatment. Liam, if I think you deep down inside, you have that bias and affinity for Vanessa because she's a jiu-jitsu girl and exotic dancer. No, bro, that's not the reason. The reason is she keeps making me fucking money. It's like if she was out there fumbling the bag for me every time and everything else about her biography was true, she could be fired for all I care, But the thing is, I really like Vanessa because she goes out there and ships me a bag every time and people doubt her. But the truth is, guys, I've watched her fight. She's gone 5 rounds before. She keeps pushing. She can get punched square in the face and keep trying to win. She just doesn't quit on herself very easily. And, at 35 years of age, she still tries her best to go out there and win every fight. Is she going to go out there and put on a great performance? Who knows? But what I can say is she's done her best work at this UFC Apex Center. And I don't think that, she's done fighting. Like, I don't think that after this fight, she's going, hey, guys, it was a good career, but it's over. I think she's still head down, focused on her career, grinding, nose to the grindstone, wants to get better. And I think she's a capable fighter. So for me, close fight. But I could see Vanessa winning it. And here's the other thing I'll say. Emily Ducote, she has one loss via submission against Elena Leigh McFarland. Not a bad fighter by any means, but a former champion, right? But she did look, like she got submitted in that fight via armbar, right? And I have to go back and rewatch it, but that is the specialty of Vanessa Demopoulos. Pro, amateur, her most common submission in grappling, it's the armbar. She's very good at the armbar. She's good at the triangle series. That's her other submission finishes most often. So she's got a good triangle. She's got a good armbar. She's got a good triangle armbar. I think that this is a spot where Vanessa's dangerous in multiple positions. I respect Emily Ducote. I've bet on her twice in the UFC, once for a very sizable amount, right? I've already talked about that fact. And I do think that Ducote is a respectable fighter, but she's fighting close in a lot of these fights. She's not always out there distancing herself. Her striking, sometimes looks great. Sometimes it looks a little tepid. She looks a little flat-footed. So she can kick hard. She can punch pretty well, but she doesn't always throw enough. She doesn't always, put her foot on the gas. I think she can be taken down at times. I don't think she's always fighting to the optimal game plan. So for me, I don't know. I'm just not super sold on Emily Ducote right now. I thought she looked better pre-UFC than she's looked in the UFC. Maybe that's a quality of competition jump, or maybe that's just she's not, looking as good. So for me, I kind of just need to see it to believe it with her a little bit. Ashley Yoder is a punching bag. With all due respect, she's not a very good fighter. And I think that this is a fight where, shout out to Martian. He said the end split. I see a couple sharp guys in there. End split or majority. Don't mind that. But Joe Rogan, viral moment. I agree. I think that she is the more marketable fighter. I think Emily Ducote is kind of a little bit vanilla in her interviews, to be fair. And I do think she's skilled, right? She's got great knockouts on the highlight resume. I've talked her up plenty, but I don't understand the level of confidence for a women's MMA fight that I expect to be close. So that's the long and short of it, guys. There you have it. We've talked about all these fights, and I appreciate you guys for being here. I want to give a couple quick shout outs, couple quick thoughts on show notes and everything like that. Get you guys squared away and get out of here. So first and foremost, drop a like on the video. I would really appreciate it. Very small sign of support, but I need it. I appreciate it. Helps get the show in front of more people. So just do me that kindness. I would be very grateful for you for doing so. Also, guys, if you're new here, get subscribed to the channel. We talk about fights each and every week. Tomorrow, we're coming back to you guys live at the normal time, 3 o'clock in the East, 3:05 p.m. Eastern, live to Thrive for Bets and Banter. That's myself. That's Just Win Baby, Rich, one of the other sharpest guys out there with a proven track record, multiple years on BetMMA.tips, winning bets, and that's something that we respect. So whether you like our personality, don't like our personality, we try and put out tracked third-party winning results week after week. It's hard to do, but that's the goal each and every week. So my goal, more good bets, fewer bad bets. We're coming off a good week last week. I think it was like +4 units. Let's go look at our BetMMA. Again, never want to speak out of turn here, but last week, +4.34 units on our track bets over at BetMMA.tips. So I was very happy about those results, 71% ROI. Year to date, we're about +12 units at a 12% ROI. Lifetime, so over the course of all my bets, I've been tracking bets since I was a losing bettor, guys. I've been doing this for many years. I've been putting out YouTube videos for a long time too. But when you look, 8% ROI, lifetime, tracking my bets, third party, plus 143 units, lifetime, tracking my bets, third party. So all that stuff, you could find it yourself. You can go through, look, each bet I placed. Many of them, guys, have a little notepad by the side. They say why I bet on them. They have write-ups in depth. Charles Johnson, I had 7, 8 reasons why I'm betting Charles Johnson, why I think he's going to win the fight. And again, I'll get plenty of bets right and wrong, but I'm going to put a lot of effort, time, and energy into the plays that I make. So the one write-up I have so far this week, there's 9 points for why I think the fighter is going to win. Doesn't mean I'll be right, but every time there's a thought process, a clear rationale that you can follow. There's a ticket that shows, hey, here's the money I bet, at what sportsbook, how long, at what time, all the details. So I just think that transparency is key. I've been talking about this on Twitter. I've been talking about this in my streams for a very long time. So it's another important reminder. I wanted to close out with some thoughts about that today. So again, if you're looking for my track record, betmma.tips/Liam Heslin. You can find all of it in the description of every video I put on YouTube. I never come on here and say anything that is not backed up with my facts, my evidence. If you guys are interested in my information, best place to get it is on Patreon, where I do a lot of write-ups. I have a lot of betting resources, things that are not just, hey, follow my bets. It's, hey, this is what I'm betting on. These are all the fights on the card. These are all the information I have on every fighter, and many fights on the card I will not bet on. I'll just let you guys know that's not how my style works. I don't deploy 25 units a week. My average betting slate is 9 units or less. Recently, it's been like 7 units or less. I've been keeping conservative slates. I go event by event, and I try and make slow, steady gains. I don't try and be Nostradamus, get every pick right, but I try and do write-ups that are sound, that are analytical, and my picks have been on point the last couple of weeks. I recap my picks for Roto Grinders every week for every event. I didn't bet on Derek Lewis, but I picked him to win, and I picked him to win by knockout. I didn't bet on Joaquin Buckley, but I picked him to win by decision. It's like I go through, and each week, even the fights that I don't bet on, there is analysis. There's thought, effort, time, energy that goes into every one of them. So that's the thing I just wanted to explain to everybody. That's what we're working on. So tomorrow for Bets and Banter, I'll have more tape study done. I'll have more research under my belt, and I'll have more to say on some of these matchups. But we also have Rich, who is another guy. We're not always going to agree on some of these matchups. That is even better, right? You get 2 different sharp opinions. Sometimes we'll agree, sometimes we'll disagree, and then you guys can decide for yourselves. Everybody's an adult. So appreciate you guys all for being here. Thank you guys all so much for the support. God bless you all. Enjoy those fights and come back next time, because we're having all the same fun again. Thanks, everybody. Take care.